Okay, so today we're going to be doing standard form. So to start off with, we actually need to know what standard form is. So standard form is a way of writing really large numbers or really small numbers very nicely and very short. So for example, if you were asked to write down the weight of the earth, that's going to be a huge number. So if you wrote it in standard form, one, it would be much easier to look at and much quicker to write. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is the form of standard form. So standard form will always look like this. Okay, a couple of rules. This number here has to be between 1 and 10. Now it can be equal to 1, but it can't be equal to 10. So if we're being really posh and using inequalities, it would be this. Okay, so A can be equal to 1, but it can't be equal to 10. Okay, and the reason why is because if we times 1 by 10, we would get 10. Okay, and that's the second part that we come to in our standard form. So standard form is always a number multiplied by 10 to the power of something. Now this power will always be an integer. Okay, if you can't remember what an integer is, that just means a whole number. Whole number. Okay, if it's positive, then it's going to be a big number. Okay, because that just means you're multiplying the number by 10 over and over again. Okay, if it's negative, it means it's going to be a small number. Okay, and by that I mean 0.00 Okay, and that's because when we did negative powers is essentially the reciprocal, and if it's like -5, you would do the reciprocal and then multiply whatever that is by itself 5 times. Just one more thing I wanted to add, which is why I've written extra. So you've got standard form, numbers that we normally have, so like 2 for example, that's just called an ordinary number. Okay, so there's sometimes say convert into standard form or convert into an ordinary number. So ordinary just means back to how we are used to it. Okay, so we're going to do some examples of converting. So we're going to start with EG1. So we're going to be starting with just converting into standard form. Okay, so if we had, for example, 200, remember what we said, the first number at the front needs to be between 1 and 10. So for 200, the number at the front would be 2. Okay, so then we think 2 times what would give us 200? That would be 2 times 100. Okay, but in standard form it has to be 10 to the power of something. We can get 100 by doing 10 times by 10, which is 10 squared. So the standard form would be 2 times 10 squared. Okay, now there are little tricks. The way I do it is I put a decimal point for, well, I guess for the next one. This one, it will just be 2.00. So for this one, the number at the front is going to be, it can't be 35 because 35 is too big. So it's going to have to be 3.5. And then I start at the end and I move how many times to get to 3.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's going to be 10 to the power of 5. Okay, now there are different ways. You can do it the way I did it here, where you think, oh, what would I have to times 3.5 by to get to 350,000? Any way is good, as long as you've got one way. Okay, the next one. So at the moment, these two have been, the number's been getting bigger. This time it's getting smaller. So again, it can't be 423 at the front. It can't be 42.3. It's going to have to be 4.23. Okay, now this time, if with this one the times that I moved, I was moving to the left. This time I'm going to be moving to the right. So you always start off with either the end of the number or start at the decimal point that's already there. So 1, 2, 3 places. Now because the number's getting smaller, it's going to be -3. Okay, if you want to do it the way that we did it here, it would be that if you times 4.23 by 0.001, that would give you this number, because you're dividing it by 10 3 times. Okay, and then this is the same as 10 to the negative 3. Okay, the last one I thought I'd add in just to be a little bit, I don't think mean's the right word, but just because they might be cruel to you. Now, this number at the front is already between 1 and 10. Okay, so the front number will still be 5. Now, the only way to keep it as being 5, because we can't just multiply it by 10, because if we did that, it would give us 50. We can't have a negative 1 there, because that'll make it 0.5. So this is where we're going to have a power of 0, because when we did indices, 10 to the power of 0 is the same as 1. So 5 multiplied by 1 just gives you 5. Okay, so that's just a bit of a trick one. Okay, so the next ones, these are just converting back, so we need to go from the standard form into the ordinary numbers. Okay, so there's different ways of doing it again. The way that I do it is I multiply the front number by 10 this many times. So I'm going to multiply the 3 by 10 twice. Okay, because the power on top of the 10 is 2. Okay, so 3 times 10 is 30. 30 times 10 is 300. Okay, and I do the same thing here. So I'm going to be multiplying this by 10 7 times. Okay, so that'll be once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, and I'm going to add the little commas in, 45 million. Okay, and the next one, so when you've got a negative power, this is when you're going to be dividing. That's how I do it anyway. So I'm going to do this divided by 10 3 times. So if I divide by 10 once, I'd get 0.57, then I'll get 0.057, and then I'd get 0.00057. 0.057. Okay, and the way to check it is if you go back to how it went in standard form. So for this one, I wanted 5.7. So if I moved 3 times, 1, 2, 3, I would get 5.7. This one 7 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. And this one twice, 1, 2. Okay, so that's the best way, is to go back and try and convert back in standard form and see if you get the same answers.